Title: The Final Station of Oblivion. The conductor, a tall, gaunt figure with a uniform that seemed to crumble like dust, punched Javier's ticket with an icy clip. "Next stop," he mumbled in a voice that sounded like stones grinding together. Javier, weary from an exhausting business trip, nodded without paying much attention, tucking the ticket into the inside pocket of his jacket. He had boarded the train at a deserted station, illuminated by flickering lampposts that cast dancing shadows. He didn't remember the name of the station, or even which city he was headed to. He simply needed to get home. The few passengers sharing the carriage seemed lost in a deep sleep, their faces expressionless and their bodies slumped in the worn velvet seats. A stale odor of metal and dampness permeated the air, making it dense and heavy. Javier tried to read, but the letters danced before his eyes, refusing to form coherent words. Frustrated, he closed the book and watched the landscape slipping past the window. Twisted trees and skeletons of abandoned buildings stretched as far as the eye could see, under a leaden sky that seemed to presage an eternal storm. Suddenly, he felt a burning heat in his chest. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the ticket. The printed letters on it burned with an infernal light, slowly consuming themselves. As the flames danced, a new word was revealed beneath the ashes: Oblivion. Panic seized Javier. What did this mean? He looked around for help, but the other passengers remained motionless, oblivious to the fire consuming his ticket. It was then that he noticed something truly disturbing. None of them had eyes. Only empty sockets that seemed to absorb the little light remaining in the carriage. He rose abruptly, stumbling over his own feet. The train shook violently, as if it were fighting against an invisible force. He tried to open the carriage door, but it was inexplicably stuck. The heat from the ticket in his hand intensified, spreading throughout his body like a burning poison. He ran to the next carriage, but what he found there was even worse. It was completely empty, with the seats torn out and the walls covered in illegible graffiti. A sepulchral silence reigned in the air, interrupted only by the metallic screech of the train wheels. He kept moving forward, carriage after carriage, each one more desolate and ominous than the last. In some he found strange and disturbing objects: broken dolls with unsettling gazes, yellowed newspapers with apocalyptic headlines, and faded photographs of people who seemed to be screaming in silence. Paranoia began to gnaw at him. He had the feeling that something was watching him, lurking in the shadows. Every creak of the train, every whisper of the wind, made him jump with fear. He felt trapped in an endless nightmare, a labyrinth of horrors from which he could not escape. Suddenly, he heard a voice. It was soft and melodic, but conveyed a sense of infinite sadness. "Your stop is next," the voice said. Javier stopped dead in his tracks, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He turned slowly, searching for the source of the sound. At the end of the carriage, he saw a figure standing in the darkness. It was the conductor, his face hidden by the shadows of his hat. Slowly, he raised his hand and pointed toward the window. Javier approached tremulously and looked outside. The landscape had transformed. The twisted trees and abandoned buildings had disappeared, replaced by a black and unfathomable abyss. The train was heading directly into the void, accelerating at a dizzying speed. He tried to scream, but the voice stuck in his throat. He clung to the railing with all his strength, closing his eyes in despair. He felt the emptiness beneath his feet, the imminent fall into eternal oblivion. Just before the impact, he opened his eyes. The conductor was standing in front of him, his face finally revealed. It was his own. But there was something different in his gaze, a coldness and a despair he had never seen before. "Welcome to the final station of Oblivion," his double said with a sad smile. "Here, all your memories, your dreams, your fears, will fade away. You will become one more of the silent specters that wander this endless train." The train crashed into the abyss. Javier awoke in his bed, soaked in sweat. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating his room with a comforting warmth. He sat up slowly, feeling his racing pulse. It was just a nightmare, he told himself. Just a nightmare. But when he got up and went to the bathroom, he noticed something strange. He couldn't remember his name. He couldn't remember where he lived. He couldn't remember who he was. He looked at himself in the mirror. An unfamiliar face stared back at him. An empty face, without memories, without identity. A silent specter ready to board the train. In his pocket, he felt a familiar warmth. He took out the ticket. The flames were already consuming it, revealing the word that would define his existence: Oblivion. The final station awaited him. The train was already running. His journey, inevitably, had begun.